panel discussion that we have. The subject is energy security, and obviously given the forum, we're going to endeavor to focus that on in the context of the transatlantic community. However, when you are talking about energy security, there's a host of truly global issues that you need to touch on and discuss. Some of these include the geopolitics of energy resources worldwide, transport issues including pipelines, which our last session most definitely touched on. Freedom of the seas, especially Straits Passage and critical choke points such as the Straits of Hormuz, critical infrastructure development and protection, methods of dealing with global and national supply shocks, such as those witnessed in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in the U.S. and the Fukushima disaster in Japan, and, of course, environmental implications from global warming in general to preparations for and responses to Deepwater Horizon-like oil spills. We'd like the conversation to be driven by the audience's questions so we get kind of more relevant to people's interests here. But I will start off by introducing each of our delegates. Laura DZELZYTE is a Senior Climate Finance Advisor to the Minister of Environment of Lithuania. Karina Marafa is a Public and Regulatory Affairs Expert at the largest oil and gas company in southeastern Europe, based in Bucharest, Romania. Samir Baptiste is a lecturer and researcher at Quebec University in Montreal who has written a report for the NATO Defense College on energy security in the Middle East and North Africa. And ANSIS SPRIDZANS is a senior associate at Sorainen law firm in Latvia who has worked on the privatization of the largest oil transport company in that country. Again, we'll definitely want to field a lot of questions from the audience, but I will start off, and we'll just go down the line here. I'll start with Laura and ask everybody to answer the same general question. That is, how do you define energy security, and what is NATO's role in it? Laura?
Yeah, thank you. I guess to start with, I must say that it's great that we are doing it in the last session, I guess, almost, because everyone is tired, so hopefully it's going to be easier. But on the other hand, it's really, I am humbled to be here, I guess, considering the prominence of people who were speaking before us. And I guess what I'm going to say is by no means more expertise than people who are sitting in the audience. But to address the question that was asked for us, and I was trying to think about the issues of energy security and in relation to NATO. And I must say it's hard because my background is climate finance, and I know more about climate change than renewable energy or energy efficiency per se. But on the other hand, I think there's definitely energy security is a big 21st century challenge that we have to address, and institutions such as NATO have to play the role. The question is, what role should it be, and how those institutions could engage with energy security questions. And when I was thinking about this question, for me, it was mainly the difference between security and defense, because mainly the way I see NATO is a matter of defense. And energy security that has a sort of underlines a number of global issues such as oil and fossil fuel depletion, reliance on foreign sources of energy, and geopolitics, development, economic efficiency, and competition. And obviously something that is close to my heart, which is environmental issues and climate change in particular. But how does NATO can get involved in this? And I think there are two facets to this question in order to answer it. And those two facets for me is the energy security within NATO, and as energy resources of military action, which is a direct operational, if you like, role of NATO, and protecting energy resources of NATO member states and partners. So these are very two distinct things. For the first one, very quickly, on the first point, is that there has been a numerous of studies done that, we are talking a lot about the finance or the lack of in NATO, considering the economic crisis and things like that. And energy efficiency is just simply making sense, if you like. It's prudent to make sure that our military actions are done in according to cradle-to-cradle strategies. And as a way of good initiatives that I can mention, and I guess it would be good to mention, US, for example, has a net zero military bases pilot programs that are already looking how to reduce the energy and water supply usage and waste. So this is sort of a thing that is ongoing, and I think this is addresses the question of energy efficiency within NATO operations, which is important. But the second one, kind of a second liner of a question is, should the NATO get involved with energy security questions in their partner or in their member states and partner states? This is a completely different question, and I will address it later, I guess, because I don't want to take too much time. But I think it's very important to underline that, firstly, energy security is to do with economics, and it was outlined by a number of delegates who were talking before us on other panels. And then the question is, maybe there are some other institutions that are equipped better to deal with economic issues and security issues as opposed to defense, because energy security is not always a defense matter, so those two things should be separated.
Thank you. Karina? Same question.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. I'm honored to be here to be able to share some of my views with you on this highly fascinating topic of energy security. I would like to begin with just an outlook of basically how our energy consumption pattern will most likely look like. If we continue with current policies, by 2030, oil and gas will still account for over 50% of our primary energy sources, talking here about EU level, and I believe statistics is pretty similar when it comes to the US as well. Even with more ambitious policies of decarbonization and things like that, such as the EU Roadmap 2050, this dependency on oil and gas will be maintained by 2030, 2040, and perhaps it will be only by 2050 that renewables will be able to really gain a majority in the energy mix that we're using. So under this context of fossil fuel dependency, it's good also to ask where the fuels come from, where the primary fuels come from. And in the EU 27, imports represent 55% of domestic consumption at the moment. My country, Romania, is in a more privileged situation. Imports account for only 33% of our domestic consumption, and it's sort of believed that if you depend on imports, you're less energy secure. I will disagree a bit with this statement a bit later, but even so, in order to reduce import dependency, a lot of efforts need to be done in Europe, less so in the United States, but in Europe, there are significant challenges. And just to give you one figure, to continue drilling for existing energy sources, to further potential of conventional oil and gas, to go into unconventional oil and gas, or to deep water gas, Romania needs to invest by 2030 between 30 and 60 billion euros. That's a huge amount of money, and this is the main challenge when it comes to energy security in the sense of reducing import dependency, at least in my part of Europe. And with electricity resources, a recent study of the World Bank was saying that if we do not invest in more infrastructure, we might encounter power shortages and blackouts by 2015 in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. And the pictures in other European countries is also bleak from this perspective. But my solution to the question is also an economic one. You need to attract foreign investors. You need to create a good environment to foster investment. And I cannot overemphasize it. Cannot overemphasize this enough. I'm sorry. You need to complete the internal market in energy in the European Union. This would foster transatlantic economic partnership a lot. Because if you have a single market in energy in the European Union with good interconnections between countries for both oil and for oil, for gas, for electricity, then you are more secure if you're a single and import dependency becomes less of an issue in this sense. Diversification of supply comes automatically if you really manage to put all those 27 countries to act together like a single market in the energy sector. When it comes to NATO per se, I believe we should simply go back over the documents and go back over the strategic concept that was agreed by the heads of state and government back not so far ago. So basically, under point 19, it says that member states of NATO will develop the capacity to contribute to energy security, including protection of critical energy infrastructure and transit areas and lines cooperation with partners and consultations among allies on the basis of strategic assessments and contingency planning. My question and my proposal would be for NATO member states and for NATO itself to take stock of what has been going on concretely in the last 2 years since the strategic concept came about in this field, whether all these very specific commitments have been addressed, and then to see if NATO indeed can move forward with energy security or not. Just a very short note, and with that I will end. I would like to emphasize and remind what General Jones was saying this morning about private partnerships, and when it comes to partnerships with the private sector, and when it comes to that, NATO has a very strong role to play in sharing information and building capacity on critical infrastructure protection. And I think that mission in energy security should be taken more seriously, but it's a relatively narrow one where you need capacity sharing, where you need just knowledge sharing, basically, in my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you to be here. I would like also to thank all persons involved in the organization, from the top leadership of the Atlantic Council and the Chicago Council to the foot soldiers. And I partly agree with my colleagues about the economic aspect of the energy security, and I would maybe disagree about the role of NATO in this topic. How I see energy security is, like said before, it's mainly an economic issue, nothing more, because the goal is to guarantee energy supply in order to allow national economies growing, or to sustain national efforts in period of recovery. But there is another aspect which is more let's say sensitive and very, very national. It touches critical activities of the state, I mean the security, from let's say the economic activities within the country related to what homeland security is, and all the overseas aspects, I mean here the military intervention abroad. When it comes to secure those both aspects, economic and very sensitive national security issues, you are at the heart of the political life of any states. The consuming countries, if you are consuming countries, or if you are producing countries. Because of this high degree of politicization of the energy security and the energy demand, every nation faces a dilemma, which is how to secure without militarizing. And this question is this question is, which tools are the best to have an efficient action and to produce, let's say, effective effect, political effect and economic effect. The answer depends on the nature of the energy security, and as said before, it's mainly an economic issue and a financial issue as well, rather than a military issue. That's why I think that NATO has nothing to do with this. It's not the job of NATO to be involved in any aspect of energy security. And there is many issues like this that are very sensitive, so national, that I can see how 28 nations can agree on this topic. Okay, there are this strategic concept, but you should keep in mind that such a document is more for PR, I would say PR issue, PR purposes than for real political commitment. That's why, okay, I'm finished here.
Thank you, Samir. I cannot agree with Samir absolutely, because actually from our panel we are 5 persons here, and 3 countries we represent have experienced bad consequences of insecurity, energy insecurity, actually, in recent 10 years. We can remember the events in Ukraine and similar situation in Lithuania. So it is possible to use such instrument also as an alternative to military tool. Therefore, I could more agree to Corina's views that probably energy security should be as one of the new priorities of NATO, and actually, in particular, infrastructure should be the particular tool which will be the key element which will result in possible, which will probably bring good result for the energy security of the countries involved. This is the situation we have in the Baltic region, because we have all our transportation infrastructure has been built in Soviet times, and so it's directed from the east to the west, so we easily can receive energy resources from the east, from Russia, from Kazakhstan, from other similar countries, but there is very actually there is a lack of possible diversification. There is no potential possibilities to receive similar resources from Scandinavia or, for example, from Poland. If there would, this would give us much more ability to negotiate each time when we go to next round of negotiations, for example, with Russia on the gas price, which usually happen to be quite hard negotiations and which are reflected in press intensively. Although I still have to mention that the fact that the infrastructure is built old time ago, long years ago, does not mean that it is always bad, because for example, in Latvia there are several hydro-generating plants which put Latvia in the forefront of European Union in if we compare the countries from the proportion of electricity which is generating by alternative sources. So there are positive results as well. Still, of course, we always have to follow that additional investment should be made, and to decrease potential risks which are caused by the infrastructure which by which we receive the gas from Russia. In respect to NATO, I think that NATO could bring quite a lot of possible good effects to Baltic states by putting energy security as a priority. it could increase the potential of diversification, also the potential resilience and information exchange could be increased. Although possible risk of possible military risks for supply chain infrastructure are low, still this is also additional benefit which could be received from NATO. There is additional benefit which Baltic states can bring to the NATO in respect to the energy security. As I mentioned already, that there is a quite high quality infrastructure which allows to transport high volume of energy resources from the east to the west through Baltic states. This probably in the future will be the element of the energy security for this is already an element, but in the future, of course, it will become even more important element of the energy security infrastructure of Europe and possibly also United States. As an example for this is a good cooperation of NATO with Baltic states, and in particular I should mention Riga port, which is involved in Afghanistan mission and through which the supplies are transported to Afghanistan. Currently the transportation is done to the east, but probably later on maybe the transportation will be done in the opposite direction. All right, thank you.
We'll open it up for questions, but first I'm going to turn it back to Laura for one more quick comment.
Yeah, it's just so funny because we have mainly like Eastern European countries on the panel, and we've got different views. Well, Lithuania is actually affected by energy security, of course, and by a means of the fact that Lithuania was mainly getting over 90% of our electricity up to 2009 we're getting from our nuclear power plant, which was closed in 2009 because it was in the agreement accession to European Union. So we became sort of an energy island, and it became a big issue for us. And I was working part of a government, and we were looking through the energy strategy and how to ensure that Lithuanian energy independence in the coming years. But then the discussions were that should we rely on various international organizations in order to gain that independence, or should we do it ourselves? Where does the money come from? Where does support come from? And I think to kind of marry together the two views that we have on this panel, I guess, through the example of Lithuania, is that it's very good to have energy security as on the agenda of big international organizations, various UN bodies, as well as NATO. But at the same time, it comes down to the action of the state itself. And for Lithuania, it was trying to get the finance and private and public finance in order to build a floating terminal for gasification, in order to get the possibility to build a new nuclear power plant. So it comes down to economics, and when it comes down to economics, it's a state issue. So therefore, I think there are two different things, and NATO is certainly, should be up there. Trying to ensure various things, but mainly the support, moral support, if I may say, as opposed to financial one.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll just open up for questions from the audience. I'll go right in the middle here.
Gergely Varga, Young Atlanticist from Hungary. A couple of years ago, an official, if I can remember correctly, from Turkmenistan, give an example. If a Chinese delegation comes to Turkmenistan to cooperate on energy issues, then in 4 years they build a pipeline. If a European delegation comes to cooperate on energy issues, then in 4 years they prepare another white book on energy issues. So my main question is, what do you see as the main obstacle within the EU of taking a really comprehensive European energy strategy, especially on the gas issues, putting this forward in terms of diversification of resources, especially. Is it finances, politics, or what do you see as the main obstacle? Thanks.
Karina, do you want to handle that one?
I will give you an Eurocentrist answer because I'm a big fan of the European Union. I cannot help having this personal sympathy for this organization, and I'm going to say that it is, after all, the sum of its member states plus a bit extra, but unless the member states have the political will to move forward with certain issues, you cannot really do anything in the European Union. As I said before, completing the internal European market would be a measure for energy security, definitely. But there is a lot of political resistance to that because there is a lot of, it is a political topic. It means liberalizing markets, it means giving up sovereignty, it means treating this issue in a less, as I said earlier when I asked the Bulgarian president, in a less sort of a Cold War mentality, but more in a, we're a market, we need to treat energy as a commodity. So it's a political issue, and then given today's economic environment, it's also a financing problem, definitely, because you have at EU level right now efforts to encourage infrastructure investments, especially in interconnections, but the question is who bears that investment, and I think the EU is good at facilitating the dialogue with this, but it cannot speak with one voice as the Chinese government would do, because it is a democracy of 27 member states that in turn are sovereign, especially when it comes to energy issues, and they act like that.
Iveta?
My question is to all the panelists, but more specifically to Laura, who's been dealing with the financing part and this public-private divide. And in fact, it's somewhat similar to the previous question. What are the obstacles? The way I see it is that we have to switch to the renewables and just move away from this fossil fuel and oil dependency. Back a few years ago at the UN, we were trying to think of ways to exactly leverage that private capital, and we were wondering what would it take. So from the Copenhagen summit up to the recent Durban summit on climate change, we in fact managed to leverage from 12 trillion supports of
billion.
Billion. Again, billion, trillion, million. Sorry, the 12 trillion of assets under management, investors who came out and said, this is what we would like governments to see doing, from 12 up to 18 trillion in asset management. So basically we had private sector coming out, private finance coming out and saying, okay, we're here, come and get us. Then there is also the convergence with the renewables. There is the climate change concern. There is the energy security related to the Middle East and Russia. So again, I mean, there is an alliance of so many factors, and it's just, my question is, what stops governments? What stops the public sector, the governments from moving? Because there's so many factors are there. It's present, and in my view, why aren't we going into that direction yet, Laura?
Okay, why aren't we going that direction? I'm sorry, just to go. Okay. Well, I think my first and short answer is time. I think for everything, good ideas to be nurtured and for good ideas to be implemented, it takes time. And I agree that there is a lot of will from both governments and public sector and private sector to move towards green and sustainable economy. But in order to do that, we need to find frameworks and matches of interaction in order to kind of facilitate the implementation. And it's not going to happen very soon, particularly that you have to think that now in a globalized world, there are sensitivities, economic sensitivities towards decisions on, for example, green economy. So if the UK decided to cut their carbon by 80% by 2050, it majorly affects their economy and how they're going to transform their industries. There was a lot of a talk on the European Union plane on carbon leakage. Whether it's a threat or not, it's a moot point. But the fact is that a lot of the companies have decided to leave European Union to elsewhere in Asia that don't have such a restrictive laws and policies for their operation. So I think it's going to take some time for everything to come together. The international agreements that are underway and the discussions are happening right now in Bonn on climate change and renewable energy, national level, local level, private and public sectors. And even though I would love to say that it's going to happen, it's just there is the kind of a silver bullet and we can address this. This is going to be there in the next few years. I don't believe it. I think it's going to take some time because we are a democracy, hopefully, from here where ideas are coming.
All right, thank you, Laura. Spela?
Samir, I'm sorry, I can't let your statement on NATO should have nothing to do with energy security stand. Why? An unacceptable percentage of our men and women are coming back from Afghanistan in body bags because of so-called fuel runs to FOBs. So even if you postulate that NATO should have nothing to do with energy security in our member countries, I think energy security in operational aspects is very important. It has come so far that the US Navy has been tasked by the DoD to look into ways of renewable energy and ensuring energy independence when in theater. And I think NATO should follow, and not only follow, but it could lead with all our abilities in renewable energies and our strength there. And I'd like to hear your comments about that.
I'm quite uncomfortable with using this expression NATO. Who is NATO? Because NATO is a military alliance and political bodies in Brussels, and except that you have national interests. And the main part from, I would say, a strategic perspective is not made inside NATO. Most of the members are, I would say, concept and doctrine consumer, not concept and doctrine producer. Concept in military matters are made somewhere in the UK, the US, in France, Germany, maybe in Italy and Spain, within a structure called multinational interoperability concept. And maybe NATO is not the main actor. I should maybe nuance my statement, as you said. NATO should not be the first actor. It could be an executive actor, but it should not be the first actor, because you need quick answers, and you cannot have a quick answer within a body or a structure when you have 38 different national interests.
Okay, thank you, Samir. Seth?
Hi. Obviously, part of the difficulty of coming up with any solution on these issues is the fact that energy is such a wide-ranging problem, as many of you indicated in your remarks. So I have a question about what it is that we do to more effectively institutionalize cooperation. Energy can be viewed as a matter of security. Energy can be viewed as a matter of economics. Energy can be viewed as a matter of environment and climate change, as many of you indicated. But it strikes me that we do have one historical example of a global initiative that clearly linked energy and security in the instance of the 1968 Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, which of course is best known for its two pillars that related to disarmament and non-proliferation. But the third pillar is a commitment to all states' ability to be able to use peaceful nuclear energy, which of course Laura mentioned was extremely important in Lithuania, and other countries rely on civilian nuclear energy as well. My question is less about the viability of nuclear energy and more about any lessons that we might draw from the experience of the NPT, which is a regime that most states around the world signed up to, and it was a regime that connected security and energy. Anything we can learn from that?
Does anybody want to volunteer for that one? ANSIS, do you know that?
Nothing to do with Baltic states.
Well, I guess in Lithuania. Shall I save you? Well, in Lithuania, there was the big question, and the debate is ongoing. I think you rightly, Seth, pointed out that there are possibilities of marrying together the questions of security and energy where they can work. And even though the nuclear power in itself is a threat, if you like. But I just advocate to move away from this, even though it is part of a solution right now as a mix. We cannot, just abandon nuclear completely in the next decade or two, but we should certainly look at other ways of doing that. You asked, what can we learn from this? I think what we can learn is that every challenge is also an answer to things, and and the thing that struck me, and this is what I was thinking about the nuclear power as a security issue, but also an answer to problems with energy, is the technology. For me, it's about the science. For me, it's about that shows that something that we create in order to protect ourselves can become an answer to our problems or for economic development. And therefore, it becomes very crucial to nurture centers for excellence, from cyber to energy, which we're trying to do in Lithuania, in order to nurture that knowledge that can be used and applied from military action, from protection to development.
If I may add just a small comment to that. There's also the question of seeking to the implementation of the commitments that you're making. This is what I was trying to hint at earlier during my intervention when I said that NATO already put this energy security issue on the agenda. Now the question is how to operationalize this preoccupation. Create excellence centers, create steady committees where you share the information and you discuss it, and most importantly, I think evaluate periodically where you stand on the issue, whether you've managed to make progress on that topic in a forum like NATO. Because if you realize, in 2-3 years that it was a nice thing that we put it in that strategic concept, it was a nice thing that we committed to energy security during the Bucharest summit, but in reality, there is really no progress in terms of concrete institutions that we've created inside the organizations to address this topic. I think it just becomes, a series of empty signifiers. Sure, it's nice to address it, but you really need to find the tools to do it. And I am pretty sure that within the Alliance, you can find some good experiences to follow up on that. And as I said, create a center of excellency, create a committee, create a group of experts that could assess where NATO stands. This question of energy security and safety, less than security, energy security and safety in operations and what we can learn from it, and simply, be more transparent about it. List what we have achieved, list on the website of the organization the progress that we've made on a specific topic that became a matter of the agenda since 2008. So it's been 4 years so far. NATO should have produced, in my opinion, a progress report. How have we progressed on this topic since the Bucharest summit, where it was a very high-level commitment to address it? Because indeed we might come up with the idea that no, this organization does not allow us to have the structures to address this topic. Let's move it back to, European Union and bilateral diplomacy or something like that.
Karina and Laura both. If I may just add in one last question, it'll probably be our last one given time constraints, and I'll turn it back to Samir. You clearly staked out a position that de-emphasized the military role the most out of anybody here. What do you think with newer possibilities for an expanded exploitation of natural resources in the Arctic? Do you see that as potentially opening the door for a more legitimate military role in energy security?
It's very complicated to answer to your question because I spent the last 6 years in Canada. I'm quite, so to speak, shaped in the Canadian way. I would say that we are talking about something which may happen, but we are not sure. The High North, the main topic dealing with the High North is more, this communication line than the oil and gas issue. And I know you have some countries like Norway who would like NATO, NATO, let's say, would like NATOize, I would say, the issue. And you have countries like Canada who are not quite reluctant for this. And I'm not sure that we can find an agreement within NATO or within other, let's say, organizations like the Arctic Council. The only way to deal with this issue of energy security is to, first of all, to watch and to try to deal with it at national level, and if we cannot, to deal with it on bilateral agreements. That's exactly what happened about the High North between the US and Canada, which leave the EU countries and China or Russia out of this matters. So I cannot answer really to your question because it's a, it's like we are talking about the future and nobody can predict it. And really, there are some topics who are raised in many countries only to unify the population, and those topics have been brought on the table by the Canadian only for national issues. That's what I can say, and this is my perception.
Okay, thank you. Fair enough. Well, we're out of time, so that's going to do it for this panel. I thank the audience for your attention, your participation, and please join me in giving a round of applause to our panelists. Thanks.